Bonjour, Nathalie here. Welcome to FrancoFoods. Today, I'm trying my hand at brioche dough. Brioche is an enriched leavened dough that can be used for a variety of baked goods. That's why I consider it a basic. The first step is to make a sponge. Now, a sponge is similar to a pouliche, where it's a yeast starter to make your dough, but as you can see, it has different ingredients and doesn't ferment as long. Okay, so I need to apologize in advance because for this episode, I am breaking my rule of doing everything by hand and I'm using my heavy mixer. I've never made brioche, and from all the reading I've done in preparing for this, it's a pretty heavy dough that has a long kneading time, and I want to make sure I get it right before I try to make it by hand. And I will! Now the sponge is ready, time to make the dough. Brioche dough contains a lot of egg, which I guess explains in part the beautiful yellowish tint. So, you might be wondering, when and where was the brioche first created? Well, as with so many long-time existing things, you can't always be certain. There's a lot of mythology surrounding things, right? But it would seem that the brioche is originally from Normandy in the northwest part of France, and sometime at the beginning of the 15th century. I guess it would be a logical story considering that butter is an important ingredient of the brioche, and Normandy is very well known for the quality of its butter. Oops, forgot to add the flour. Here we go. Okay, so all in all, the dough is kneaded for a good 15 minutes, so I can't imagine how long it would take doing this by hand. I guess it's understandable that the recipes I found say to use a strong mixer. I will keep researching though to figure out how to do it by hand, I promise. Also, I'm making sure not to stop the kneading early, even if it looks good. If you saw the Zupf episode, you know it's not a good idea to stop kneading early. I learned that lesson. In the 1740s, after making its way to Paris area, the brioche parisienne, as it was known, became popular with the aristocrats. It would seem that King Louis XIV told his bakers to make rich-tasting food. So, in the case of the brioche, they added more butter than what was previously used. By the way, everything I'm doing is what is explained in the recipe, right down to the smooshing of the butter, and all the information is below in the description. Have you ever heard the story that Antoinette would have said, "Let them eat cake," when she was told that her subjects didn't have any bread? Well, it seems that the actual quote is, "Qu'ils mangent de la brioche." So it wasn't cake, it was brioche. That said, according to historians at least, she could not have been the one to say that. Apparently, when a princess did say this quote, Marie Antoinette was 10 years old and still living in Austria. It was reported in the writings of a philosopher called Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I don't know about you, but my world is upside down right now. Oh wow, I'm so glad they warn us about what happens when you add the butter, because I would have been panicking right now. Just keep kneading, just keep kneading. Finally, in the 19th century, many professions were on the rise, including bakers, pun intended, which furthered the popularity of the brioche throughout France. Done. Time for the first rise. Like bread, I'm just going to let the dough rise for 2 to 2.5 hours at room temperature. This week's vocab is la fécule de maïs, congelée, la farine, tout usage, le pâtissier, la pâtissière, le boulanger, la boulangère. So the dough has been rising for 2 hours and it has nicely doubled. Time to deflate it and chill it overnight in the fridge. To me, it sounds counterintuitive to rise dough in a fridge, but apparently it does rise, just slower, and it also helps develop the taste and texture you want for a brioche. So besides the traditional brioche à tête, or made as a loaf, what can brioche dough be used for, you may ask? Well, here's what I discovered in my research. It can be made into a variety of buns, sweet and savory, with addition of like cheeses and chocolates, sausages, and all sorts of stuff. It can also be used as a pie base, especially with wet fillings like plums or custard. It seems that due to its texture, it absorbs the liquid without getting soggy, so that's handy. You can make cinnamon rolls, donuts, braided breads, lots of stuff. It would seem that the limit of the use of brioche dough is our imagination. Now there's a challenge. Oh boy, my bowl tipped sideways. Well, look at that though. The dough did rise. It's now ready to be used. Or you can wrap it well and freeze it until you need it. I have plans for this dough, but not right away, so I'm going to store it until I'm ready. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you give brioche a try. I'd love to hear from you. Merci et à la prochaine.